Hello, we're going to take another journey back in time. Basically, the evolution of the sport. We'll be going back to May, June of 1971. It's, again, that season seems a long time ago to me, but, and it was. But it's still interesting. The first thing I noticed when I was going back through this particular issue, and excuse my outdoor look this morning, I've been cutting wood for this winter months we're in right now. It's one of my favorite ways of staying in shape. But because people often ask me that, they say, how do you stay in shape? Well, really, chopping wood and gathering wood is one way. One of the first things I noticed in this deal was showing you how to get hooked. It doesn't really go in here and tell you how to get unhooked, but at this same time frame, I was guiding one day, and I made it a windy day with a big topwater lure. Had 3 different treble hooks on it, and I hooked myself right here in the side of the neck. And that was in my career, like I said, 1971. I think I was, you know, fishing in the bass club, and you know, I can't go to the doctor, you know, I'm in a tournament here on the lake, and so Randy Fight, my brother, I said, Randy, I read about this deal in Film Stream magazine. Okay, how do you take hooks out? And again, I'm hooked with, it was actually, you know, a big topwater right there. And one of them was real close to the jugular vein, and I said, I'm gonna tell you how to take them out. Well, first you had to cut the hooks off the bait. And there was 2 of them hooked in of the 2 treble hooks. And then you had to cut the other hooks off. So it was a little bit of a process. And it's the old technique where you put a piece of string underneath the hook here, and then you push down on with your thumb, and then once you got it lined up, you pop it out. And you know, Randy said, I'm not sure about this. This looks dangerous. We need to go to the doctor. And I said, no, we don't have time. I said, do it. And so I heard him pull, and I heard it bounce off the wall. I didn't feel a thing. And I go, wow, is it out? And he said, yeah, it's out. And so we did the other one, and same result. And so that's how I kind of learned how to remove hooks, because in the old days, my dad would take it. I know I was hooked several times in my younger days. My dad would take a pair of pliers and push it all the way through, because you couldn't pull it out backwards with a barb on it. And that hurt like the dickens. If you went to the doctor, he'd give you a shot. I didn't like shots. This was amazing because it didn't hurt, and it was very effective. So most anglers nowadays know that technique. If you don't, look it up. But, you know, here's the other thing. See this guy here? What saves him, there's 2 things I learned that you should be wearing fishing, is a hat, a hoodie if it's cold, and sunglasses. The worst thing you could get is a hook in the eye. Sunglasses will save you 98% of the time. The hat will save you getting hooked in the head 75% of the time. It won't go through the head, you'll just be hooked in the hat. So these are all little things you pick up along the way in this world of fishing, where you're dealing with a lot, and the hooks nowadays have gotten sharper and sharper. Again, a lot of things I've showed you already. The boats are definitely evolving. Every issue, I can see that in almost every issue. The troll motors are evolving. But here's the one thing that was evolving at the same time, and bass had to become aware of it, because back then there was really no horsepower rules. Like this, you see this neat little picture that some guys were putting engines on boats that were so big. Boats didn't have upright flotation here, so if they sunk engine first, you know. And of course, a little cartoon, you know, it's kind of exaggerating here, but, you know, at the same time, you know, in 1967, the average horsepower on a bass boat was 18 horsepower. By 1971, the tournament guys were running 100 horsepower on boats that weren't rated for it. But then again, there was no rule then. My first bass boat I rigged had a 25 horsepower, I think it was an Evinrude on it. And so over time, this is when the idea was, hey, we got to do something about controlling the horsepower. And BASS was actually the first one to do that. That's what's strange about a lot of the rules. BASS brought a lot of rules that the state and even the federal government eventually adapted and followed themselves. In fact, my first bass boat, and this is kind of different, until Johnny Morris came with the fully rigged trackers. Most guys, the boats didn't come fully rigged. You bought your boat, you bought the engine, maybe that dealer would put them together for you. You bought the seats, you'd put them in the boat yourself. Front decks were usually made by you. Most of the boats didn't have front decks. Then they added the troll motors and they added the anchors. My first boat was a Falcon Tiger Cub, and it was 14 foot long, and I had to build the deck on it. I had front end steering on it. You didn't have a console steering back then. You had front end. You were sitting up in the front. And I had a 25 horse Evinrude on it. And I can't tell you how many times when going across big lakes in a little 14-foot boat, I was fishing Rayburn, Toledo Bend. I'll be going through rough water, and I'm up front bouncing, boom, boom, and the front end steering would break off in my hand, and I couldn't steer. And I trained my brother, who was sitting back there in the back seat. That 25 had the handle still on it. He'd grab the handle, pull it down, and he'd start driving the boat. I wish we'd had the video of it, because it had to be the most common, but it worked. And he was always prepared. If all of a sudden I had the steering in my hand, he would grab the tiller, on the boat and drive it, and good times. You look back on it, and it's just nowadays, look at all the things we have, and it's to the borderline extreme, but at the same time, today's boats are probably the most technologically functional, advanced boats, except for maybe some military boats that exist. But anyway, you see again all the things they're doing in this boat. The anglers back then put it together. They wired a lot of the wiring on it. They put it together. We only usually had one battery for the engine and the troll motor, and you'd steal your battery out of your truck to have an extra battery. And there was days when the wind was so bad, you run your boat battery down, you'd use your truck battery, get back to the dock, and the truck wouldn't start. So you have to have somebody to jump you. And this is a good example now where, like, Ranger boats first started coming with some built-in features. But still, most of the time the dealer was, okay, did you want a Mercury, did you want a Johnson, did you want a Chrysler engine? And this is really when the boat, even 1971s, they started to get more sophisticated. Here's a little interesting deal, I was an incredible, just obsessed with keeping notes. Even in the bass clubs it started. I would keep notes on, most of the time in the early days, it was what I did wrong. And I would always go up to one of the guys in the club that did well. And I learned real quick, don't ask him where he caught them. You ain't gonna get any good information if you ask that stupid question. But I'd get up, look, I'd even say, I don't want to know where you caught them, but can you tell me just some of the patterns? Were they deep? Were they on a drop-off? Were they shallow? And most of the time in the bass club, there were certain guys that would really share that information with you. And I'd write it down. I'd write down what I did, and it didn't work, and then I'd write it down what the top one or two guys did. And here in this feature, they have a logbook for $2.95. You know what my books were? It was when I flunked out of college. You had these blue books that you kept notes in when you went to class. I had too many of those I didn't use in college, and so I kept them. I'll put all my bass fishing notes in them, and they really were incredibly important, because that's, I didn't totally understand pattern fishing then. I was just learning, but they became a really important part of pattern fishing when I started to understand and how to mix these notes with them, because that's what you're writing down. You're writing down, okay, so and so caught them shallow on a spinnerbait, and it's just June or July or whatever. So they become invaluable. Again, 1971, this is when I was really starting to follow a lot of the guys and starting to have people that I really started to respect. This is one of my favorite people, Tom Mann, Cherokee, full-blooded Cherokee Indian, Uvalde, Alabama. And again, you look at where these were 10 and 15 fish limits, and they were still putting them with stringers. And of course, the bass ended up being thrown dead into aluminum boats with a little bit of ice in, and so supposedly they were donated to charities and old folks' homes and things like that. But these were just a few. You know, I go back in time. Most of these people now are not on this planet, but it's just interesting that these were some of the first ones. And here's, I think, Roland, you know, coming in the top 5 usually, always back then.
Looks like Scott.
Does it? You really got it. Yeah, that was Roland. Yeah, it does look like his son Scott a lot. But there's Roland there, and there's Al Linder, Stan Sloan. He was one of the original spinnerbait manufacturers. Roland, Tom Mann. This guy nobody knows, but I do. Bobby Meadows. He started the Ford dealers for bass in Louisiana, and I ended up fishing quite a few of those tournaments. And I don't know most of these other guys, but so I was still, I hadn't joined yet. I'd started in March of 1974, and this is 71. Anyway, again, it's just an interesting look back in time, really to see the evolution. If you haven't seen it yet, you can see what it was before and when it eventually changes to. That's 1971. Hope you enjoyed it.